Considering that Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is on its way, I've once again been pulled into the lore and mythos of Scott Cawthorne's now iconic game. As I've been dedicating a lot of brainpower to it, while actually being too cowardly to play, I've decided to put together a look into the mechanics behind all the Five Nights at Freddy's games. I call it Dismantling Freddy. The first game, which Scott said in an interview was going to be his last try at games, was wildly successful, especially with YouTube Let's Players, who would get spooked by the jump scares, and the viewers of said Let's Players ate it up. The game is fairly straightforward in its design and programming, as Scott was able to bring the sequel out only 3 months after the first one, and the third game only 4 months after that. However, there is plenty of variance between each game, and barely any recycled material. Animatronics in varying states of repair, as well as completely new animatronics, new settings, and different map layouts. Combined with the new mechanics, this is an impressive feat to be created within a few months of each other. Let's start with the office. I will note that there is an incredible connection between the player and the security guard. In both cases, you are sitting in front of a desk with limited mobility and are using a monitor to keep an eye on everything. In this regard, you end up projecting yourself into the game, and it only takes a few minutes to feel like you're actually the security guard. This is what makes the tension and the resultant jump scares even worse. Next up is the basic mechanic found in all of the Five Nights games, the security cameras. This allows you to keep an eye on everything going on in the environment. Some cameras move back and forth, others are stationary. All of them, like most closed-circuit cameras, are a little fuzzy. After playing for a short while, controlling the cameras becomes natural, and the entire environment of Freddy Fazbear's is built through these unblinking eyes. Due to the static interference, there is a lot of squinting going on. Is that the outline of Bonnie or Chica? Is that the glowing eyes of Springtrap? In the first game, Bonnie's purple color actually made him harder to pick out of the darkness in some of the cameras. Chica, with her bright white Let's Eat bib on the other hand, actually made her easier to spot. While we're on the subject of the security cameras, I should also note that there are a few random times when the animatronics would do something a little less conventional. You initially think they wouldn't notice the security cameras until you see them encapsulating the entire image, Bonnie peering deep into the camera and your soul, or other times when they seem camera shy with good reason, such as Springtrap hiding just out of sight, which, as they are completely unexpected, really makes people's skin crawl. I should also note the audio in all of the games as well. In all the games, you hear random noises which actually are signifiers when someone was on the move. In the first game, the camera for the kitchen was disabled, but the audio was still present, and even if you weren't looking at the kitchen, you could hear the faint shuffling of pots and pans. In the second and third games, you could specifically hear when something was in the vents, a critical point in those two specifically, since there are direct connections to your office from almost anywhere. The first two games also featured songs that were recognizable by most children, and most adults too. Freddy's music was the Toreador March, and the puppet's music box was My Grandfather's Clock, which, if you look at the lyrics, is equally creepy, especially since the version in the game comes from a familiar children's toy. As an aside, don't you think Freddy's jump scare in the first game would not be as creepy if he just went "Booga booga booga booga"? Now let's get into each individual game. In Five Nights at Freddy's 1, the design is relatively simple. You have your 11 security cameras, 2 doors, blind spotlights, and a power meter. Using anything consumes power, and you have a limited amount of power to get through the night. In this game, there are only 4 animatronics and 1 special one if you count Golden Freddy. You can just keep your eyes on the cameras, and if you're fast enough, you can catch when the animatronics move from place to place just from seeing the flicker of the camera. Bonnie has the ability to seemingly teleport, which is a bit of an annoyance as they can be in the dining room 1 second and then by your door For Five Nights at Freddy's 2, Scott really stepped up his game. This game features 10 different animatronics, including the Golden Freddy. In this game, there are lots more mechanics. There's no doors anymore, but you now have a Freddy mask which will fool some of the animatronics. You have a flashlight which you can shine on all the rooms. There are vents with ventilation lights which have replaced the blind spotlights from the first game. And then there's a music box which has to be kept wound up, or else you're taken out by the creepy puppet. I believe this game to be the most complex of the 3 games. You've got 12 cameras to keep an eye on, only one more camera, but you have 9 animatronics wandering around, and if they wander into your office, you have to put on the Freddy Fazbear mask and wait for them to pass, during which you can't do anything else. Furthermore, Foxy and the puppet aren't fooled by the mask, and Foxy has to be confused by shining the flashlight on him, and the puppet has to be kept at bay with the music box. There are also minigames that occur randomly once you die, which allow you to delve a little bit more into the lore of the game. But I must note that because they're random, it's more difficult to piece together the entire story on your own. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 continued to change the game up even further. Rather than having more animatronics, we have less. It seems backwards and simpler to do this, but the challenge is still there because the mechanics have changed all over again. There's only one animatronic, but there are plenty of special ones that don't kill you. They cause, or are the cause of, system malfunctions. There are still no doors, and this time there's no flashlights either. Instead of having any mechanic to protect you directly, such as the doors or the Freddy mask, you have an audio system which lures Springtrap away from you.
Hello?
You now also have a maintenance panel conveniently placed on the opposite side of the room, which allows you to reboot systems after they fail. This leaves you like a sitting duck, much like the Freddy mask did. The security system was also updated. Now you have 15 cameras, and they're split amongst 2 different maps, the attraction and the ventilation system. As well, you can seal off vents to prevent Springtrap from taking a shortcut, but that comes with a chance that you're going to hallucinate more. And finally, the minigames in this game come after every successful night, so they are sequential and therefore work much better in telling the background story than the first 2 games. What surprised me about all of these games is how similar they all feel, while managing to have wildly different mechanics. Number 1 had fairly simple controls but a killer hook, while the second game was a crazy exercise in time management, and then the third game managed to still turn the entire concept on its ear, and yet still retain the scariness that makes the Five Nights at Freddy's games so incredibly wonderful. Now with the 4th and final chapter knocking on our door, what new mechanics do you think will be introduced? Thanks for watching. If you like what you hear, feel free to subscribe. I don't post much, but I really want to push myself to get more analysis and my own Let's Plays down the line. Thanks for watching again. I'm Tamakun. See you next time.